Imagine two people reading a poem, and then you ask those two people, tell me tell me your reaction to this poem. No two people are going to have the exact same. Let's say those two people picked at random from around the world. They reacted in precisely the same way. Precisely the same words came out of their mouth in reaction to that poem. It would never happen. Of course, we are much too variable. Language, because of its fuzzy nature, because of the way that language uses metaphor and symbolism, it promotes this massive, tremendous variation in our personalities and our behavior. What I propose is that language is the promoter of variation in our species that allows us to survive. We are not lockstep with our anatomy to our environment. We have separated behavior from environment, and we have made our behavior enormously variable, and that allows us to attach or to map our activities onto the environments we move into and so on, social environments and physical environments. Our ability to adapt, our capacity for adaptation is through our language and through culture. And that appears to be missing from Neanderthal, or at least in the degree and complexity and subtlety that you see in modern humans. I think that's the key. I think that's what we mean. What is it that intelligence confers, or what is it about intelligence that is selectively advantageous? I think that it has to do with adaptability, which is itself a product of behavioral variation, which is itself a product of language, behaviorally modern language with Velcro symbolism, deep symbolism, as massively contrasted with, yes, other animals use symbols, but they were what we called flat or shallow or Teflon symbols that everything slides off of, nothing sticks to. I really think that's what's going on. Now, of course, all of that can be refined, just like any concept. All of that can be refined and detailed, but I think that's what we are looking at when we are seeing modern humans replacing Neanderthals. I think it comes down to metaphor. I think it comes down to a mind that is capable of metaphor and that is capable of subtler adaptations and subtler mapping of behavior to environment. That, I think, is the key. Now, that allows modern humans to essentially reproductively overtake, apparently, Neanderthals. I think that's the key. And those ideas bring in, or they incorporate, all variety of material from a wide range of anthropological studies. One of them is this whole world that I just mentioned of cultural evolution. You can read a book, you can read Coevolution, Genes, Culture, and Human Diversity. You can read this book by William Durham, in which he goes through and describes very explicitly, very clearly, the fact that there is a genetic information system that is evolving, and that there is also a cultural information system that is evolving. This does not mean that culture rides on the genes, and you have to keep that clear. What I learn as culture, the things that I am enculturated to believe and so on, those do not get into my genes, and my offspring, if I were to have children, are not born knowing anything that I know. They are born with the capacity for language. Noam Chomsky indicated this as early as 1965. Humans worldwide are hardwired. They're born with the cognitive structures ready to absorb grammatical structures, ready to absorb language. By 3 years old, we're making sentences and so on. And we've grasped we're starting to grasp the grammars. No, we don't. We're not born with a language on board, nor are we born with cultural information. So this is not saying that culture rides on the genes and that every characteristic of a human culture can be reduced to what fitness benefits does it confer to anybody in that society. the what it's saying is that there are significant, not trivial, there are significant parallels between the biological and cultural information systems, evolutionary systems, that must be studied and undertaken as a central study by cultural anthropologists in particular, I think. Because cultural anthropology, let's start with archaeology. Archaeology attempts to understand ancient cultures. Therefore, we need a good cultural anthropology. Cultural anthropology is supposedly studying culture and how it changes through time. Of course, it can document what's happening now, but what is happening now, what is there now today, that is meaningless without an understanding of where it came from. So cultural anthropology, I think, must be historical. It has to have a historical dimension if it's going to be of any value to anyone. The problem is that since the 1800s, since the crude attempts to use Darwinian approaches to human society, cultural anthropology rejected, since the 1800s, cultural anthropologists have essentially rejected evolutionary approaches to what culture is. They have thrown out the baby with the bathwater. Yes, social Darwinism was a falsehood. That's not how culture changes. But that doesn't mean that culture doesn't evolve. As it turns out, it does change by an evolutionary process that is not trivial, not just a sort of an analog. It is an evolving information system. And you can read about that if you want in Coevolution. All of that brings us to an understanding, I think, of these Neanderthals and the modern humans who replaced Neanderthals. Much better understanding of all of these issues than we've had in the past 100 or 150 years. All right, I think that might be it. I'll probably have some final comments a little bit later on, but I think that's really what I wanted to communicate today.